Good evening, everyone. Today, I wanted to talk about Solana. Hex Trust just dropped $100 million into the Solana infrastructure. The CME Group launched Solana futures that trade like spot. AT&T is routing real cellular traffic through a Solana-based network. While crypto is arguing about which chain is better, institutions are placing billion-dollar bets, and they're not choosing what you think. Let's talk about what they're seeing that retail is not. Here's what most outlets have missed about Hex Trust announcement, okay? On December 12th, they didn't just announce wrapped XRP, they launched it with over $1 million in total value locked from day one. That's not a pilot program, that's institutional confidence. But here's the interesting part. Hex Trust chose Solana as one of its primary chains for the wrap XRP, alongside Ethereum and Optimism. Why does that even matter? Because Hex Trust isn't just some random DeFi protocol, they're a regulated digital asset platform for institutions. So when Georgia, the CPO, says they're expanding XRP liquidity in DeFi and cross-chain networks, what she's really saying is we've done the technical due diligence and Solana passes institutional standards. That's massive validation. Massive. The technical implementation uses Layer Zero's Omni Fungible Token Standard. But the custody, that's the hard part that institutions care about, well, that's Hex Trust. Segregated accounts, KYC, AML compliance, insurance coverage, full auditability, and this is how TradFi thinks about crypto infrastructure. 5 days ago, the CME Group, the world's largest derivatives marketplace, launched spot quoted futures for Solana. Now, if you're not familiar with traditional finance, this might sound boring, but let me explain why this is massive. Traditional crypto futures are priced differently than spot markets. They're a basis risk, funding rates, all the mechanisms that institutional treasurers are nervous about. Spot quoted futures trade at or very close to actual spot price of Solana. That makes hedging strategies much cleaner for institutions. But here's what crypto Twitter isn't talking about. CME doesn't just wake up and decide to launch products. They look at client demand, regulatory clarity, and market liquidity. The fact that they are offering these alongside Bitcoin and Ethereum futures, not as some experimental side project, but in the main lineup, that tells you where institutional demand actually is. These contracts are also smaller and more capital efficient than the standard Solana futures. That's CME saying we're seeing demand from actual traders, not just macro hedge funds. This is retail to institutional crossover territory right here. Okay, let's talk about the AT&T partnership. All right. AT&T we know is one of the largest telecommunication companies in America. They've been offloading cellular data traffic onto the Solana blockchain called Exanet. And it's been going on for about a year now. So here's how it works. Exanet sells Wi-Fi hotspots to businesses, such as like hotels, malls, campuses, commercial venues. These hotspots use something called passport technology to create a seamless handoff. So when you're in coverage, Your phone automatically connects to XNet's Wi-Fi without you noticing. AT&T pays XNet in dollars for the data offload. XNet pays the node operators with the XNet tokens. Make sense? According to their Doom dashboard, XNet has 688 active nodes and around 9 million users that have connected to their network. That's not testnet data, that's production level traffic from real AT&T customers. Now, why does that matter for Solana? Because XNet's co-founder, Richard Duvall, a former CTO of Google X, said something very, very revealing. He said, XNet is the poster child for DePIN. We finance millions of dollars of equipment on our own network using our token, without conventional equity or debt financing. That's only possible on a blockchain with low transaction costs and high throughput. You can't run real-time connectivity network on a chain where transactions cost $10 and take minutes to settle. It just won't work. Okay, let's talk briefly about Solana's architecture. And I promise this will be painless, but we need to talk about it because it's different. Most blockchains process transactions sequentially, one after another, like a single file line. Solana uses something called C-level. This processes transactions in parallel. Here's a simple version. Before executing, every Solana transaction declares which account it will read and which it'll write to. If two transactions don't touch the same accounts, they can run at the same time across multiple CPU cores, right? Transaction A touches account X, transaction B touches account Y, both execute simultaneously. This combined with proof of history, which is basically a cryptographic timestamp that orders events without relying on external clocks. A Tower BFT consensus, Byzantine fault tolerant, which uses that timestamp to reach finality faster with less communication between validators. This is definitely innovative. Now, why does this matter for institutions though? Because when you're running a DePIN network like XNet or processing wrapped tokens, mint and redemptions like Hex Trust, or settling payment rails with X402, you need deterministic performance at scale. You can't have a network that grinds to a halt during high usage. Solana's architecture was specifically designed to prevent that single-threaded bottleneck. All right, let's talk briefly about X402. The X402 is one of those developments that's flying definitely completely under the radar. It's potentially massive. It revives the HTTP status code 402, payment required. This has been reserved since 1997, but it was never actually implemented. Here's the vision. Right now, if you want to charge for API access or content, you need a payment processor, subscription system, and all this overhead. X402 basically embeds payment functionality directly into web protocols. An API hits a paywall, automatically pays in stablecoin, gets immediate access. No account, no subscription, no middlemen to take the cuts. I think that makes sense. So Coinbase built a facilitator that provides fee-free USDC payments on Base as well as on Solana networks, specifically for the X402 transactions. In November, the X402 transactions actually spiked by 19% of all Base network activity. That's not test, that's an adoption. But here's where things get really interesting, y'all. This isn't just for human payments. It's actually designed for agentic commerce. AI agents paying each other for either data, services, compute. When you need a microtransaction settling in real time without human intervention, you need rails that are fast, cheap, and programmable. I think that makes Solana a nice sweet spot. Wouldn't you agree? Let's talk about the Solana secret phone. In August of 2025, it's easy to dismiss this as another crypto phone experiment. But let's zoom out for just a second. Solana Mobile isn't trying to compete with the iPhone. They're building a mobile native crypto stack, the seed vault for secure key storage. That's a dApp store that doesn't have Apple's 30% tax, and it integrates that make blockchain feel more like bolted on. The Seek launched somewhere around $450 to $500. That's half the price of the original Saga. More importantly, they announced the SKR token to fuel an open ecosystem of devices. That's not about one phone. That's about creating incentives for other manufacturers to adopt the Solana mobile stack. All right? Here's the thesis. Let's think about this. If Web3 stays trapped on desktops, MetaMask browser extensions, adoption pretty much can cap out. Mobile is where 70% of where internet usage happens. Solana Mobile is betting that native blockchain integration, self-custody without seed phrases written on paper, instant dApp access, built-in wallet functionality, that's the unlock for mainstream adoption. And by the way, the Saga phone originally sold for $1,000. It's now dropped to just under $600. Then it became a collector's item when Bonk airdrop made them profitable to own. That's not just sustainable economics, but it proved that demand does exist, and the Seeker is productized version of those lessons. Okay, let's move on. At Breakpoint 2024, Badkus announced a decentralized price mapping layer for real-world assets, exclusively on Solana Mobile. Now, Badkus has been building a blockchain marketplace for collectible whiskey and wine for some time now, but this price mapping announcement is different. Here's the problem they're solving. How do you build how do you price an illiquid asset on chain? Collectible whiskey doesn't trade on exchanges. There's no Bloomberg terminal for rare bottles. Pricing is opaque, based on auction results, dealer quotes, maybe even vibes. That makes it really hard to build DeFi primitives. You can't lend against collateral if you can't have a reliable value. Badkus is building a decentralized infrastructure to aggregate that pricing data from multiple sources and create transparent, verifiable price feeds for real-world assets. If that works for whiskey, it'll work for art, it'll work for collectibles, commercial real estate, and anything illiquid asset category. They're doing it on Solana, again, because it's fast, cheap transactions. If you're going to have a functionable marketplace with real price discovery, high fees just really kills it. It kills the liquidity in illiquid markets. So here's what most crypto coverage gets wrong. The narrative is still Solana is the meme coin casino, or Solana is the Ethereum killer. But that's not what institutions are building. Look at the pattern across everything we just covered. Hex Trust, custody infrastructure, CME future products, AT&T routing cellular traffic, Coinbase integrating X402 payment rails. These aren't DeFi protocols or NFT projects. These are traditional enterprises integrating blockchain into existing business models. The question isn't, will Solana replace Ethereum? The question is, what types of applications require Solana's specific architecture? And the answer is increasingly applications that need real-time settlement, high throughput, and predictable low fees. That's payment rails. That's DePIN networks. That's real-world asset marketplaces and AI agentic commerce. Ethereum is optimizing for decentralization and security as foundational properties. However, Solana is optimizing for performance and cost efficiency. Neither is better. They're solving different problems. But enterprises voting with capital are showing which trade-offs matter for production systems. I hope you enjoyed this session and have a good day.